Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
All right, and for that, and appreciate him sticking with us through the phone issues, it is our pleasure to welcome in from ESPN, Matt Miller, who crushed it this weekend on day 3 of the draft, and of course, crushed it like he did every year leading up to that. It's just, Matt, you got to be on TV this weekend. It was such a cool moment for you, talking about what it was like to grow up, kind of idolizing Kuiper and what it meant to you to be on that set this weekend. And then it also is in your backyard, right? So at what point do you kind of get off set on Saturday and just go, wow, I can't believe I did that?
It hasn't hit yet. I think the post-draft exhaustion is setting in. The adrenaline wore off. I woke up Sunday morning, I felt like I'd been hit by a car. So I think the adrenaline wore off, man. But honestly, it was such a special moment for so many reasons. And I can't say enough about how the people at ESPN helped make that a really special moment for me. My wife and kids were able to go to the draft, and I haven't told anyone else this story, but we're going to get into it. It's 5 minutes before the draft starts. I hear you know how it is. You got monitors in your ears. You can't hear anything. But I got this weird I should probably turn around, and I turn around and look to my left, and my parents are standing there, and I didn't know they were going to be there, and they're smiling and waving at me, and I'm starting to get emotional, and I'm like, okay, I got to turn around and I got to focus on my job. Otherwise I'm going to start bawling on live TV. So it was top to bottom an amazing day. It was such a fun time, getting to work with Mel and Todd and Reese Davis and Louis Riddick was awesome. But it's you're always thinking about the next year. So I started my 2024 doc today on the old spreadsheet, and I'm ready to get rolling, man.
That is awesome. I appreciate you sharing that story a lot. And then you had to go on TV and as your parents are making you well up and talk about 150 dudes that most of us have never heard of.
Right?
And now we all have opinions on, but you've had opinions on them for a while because, like you just said, you've been working on them for a year. So I just ask as broadly as I can, what did you make of what the Commanders did over the 3 days as we sit here in Washington with bated breath for your analysis?
Yeah, I really liked what they did. Now, we can all sit back and say, man, they didn't draft a single quarterback. That makes me a little nervous. But it's also the idea of what are the expectations for this team in 2023 with new ownership coming in. A lot of things are fluid right now for the Washington Commanders. So if your expectation is we're going to go out and we're going to beat the Cowboys and we're going to beat the Eagles and we're going to beat the Giants and we're going to win the East, you might look at this draft and say, okay, well, still don't feel great about quarterback or left tackle unless you're a believer in Sam Howell, in which case you're going to be shaking your head at everything I say. But if you look at this draft as, hey, let's get ourselves set up for what's the future, for what's coming, new ownership, likely a new stadium, and a situation in 2024 where there will be some legit quarterback prospects at the very top of the draft, one of them being somewhat of a local in Caleb Williams. So I think you look at it that way of, hey, let's see what happens with Sam Howell, and let's see what happens with Jacoby Brissett, who's a really good veteran quarterback. And if it doesn't work, well, then new ownership can build this franchise around a quarterback who is literally from Washington, D.C., and Caleb Williams. So I think it's win-win. I love Emmanuel Forbes. I really like the spinning the middle rounds, bolstering the trenches. I'm a gigantic KJ Henry fan. I think he's going to be a steal for this team. And even Chris Rodriguez, had it not been for, the DUI, the suspension, might have been drafted several rounds earlier. So overall, not the sexiest draft in terms of positions, but I think a really smart one for building a team.
Matt Miller, ESPN, is with us. So it's funny because I think we disagree a little bit on how, but totally agree on the philosophy. This draft was always, or this season was always going to come down to whether or not Sam Howell was good or not. And drafting a quarterback now actually can hurt you. And I think we've seen this over the years, Matt. And frankly, when I used to be on the beat, the last year that I was on the beat here before I switched into the studio role was 2019 when they drafted Haskins. And Jay Gruden was perplexed because he's like, you just spent my first round pick in a season where I have to win on someone who's not going to help me. And so if you're Rivera, you're like, okay, at least we got Emmanuel Forbes. And if Howell sinks, then I'm going to sink. But that's the boat that they're rowing in. Just real quick to kind of close that loop, what did you have as Howell last year? Because I know some people that had him as QB1 last year in that class that was obviously very down. Sounds like you did not quite have that grade on Sam Howell last year.
No, let me pull my board up real quick. I didn't have that grade on him. I had him as like a mid-round. I think it was round 4. I'll get it pulled up. But I wasn't the biggest Sam Howell fan. I'll admit that. I didn't see it in what he did that final year at UNC. Yeah, so I had a 4th-round grade on him. So I didn't see like that from him. To me, he's someone I want to be proven wrong because everything I've heard about Sam Howell is he's a really good dude. So I would like to be proven wrong on this evaluation. I saw him as someone who was going to be as good as the weapons around him. And I think that's what happened at UNC. When he had the dudes around him, Diamond Brown, Daz Newsome, the 2 great running backs, he was able to distribute and just be a guy. When he had to kind of put the team on his back in 22, that's when he struggled, especially early in the year. So, again, best case scenario, I'm very wrong about Sam Howell, and you guys have your quarterback of the future, and you're paying him the price of a 5th-round draft pick for 2 more years. That's a great problem to have if I'm incorrect about Sam Howell. Best case, and then the other side of it is, hey, if Howell is like, okay, he's kind of who we thought he was, he's going to be a solid backup. Well, then we're looking at a draft next year that has Caleb Williams, that has Drake May, that has Michael Penix, that has Quinn Ewers. Like there are some dudes that look like they could be legitimate franchise quarterbacks in next year's draft.
No doubt about it. All right, so let's get beyond Forbes, who you said you like, but we obviously talked about him or had the chance to talk about him a little bit more on Friday, the nature of a Thursday draft and a Monday through Friday show. Quan Martin is so interesting because I think a lot of folks wanted the Commanders, a lot of fans wanted them to go offensive line there. You have a guy in Cody Mock on the board who everybody loves in part because he's missing his 2 front teeth, but also because he's a nasty good football player. But what did you make of the Martin pick, both of like who you think he is as a player and the value they get there for what else was on the board at 47?
Yeah, at 47, that was a little bit of a reach for me, but I say that based on when we put a ranking on a player, it's for a generic team. It's like no team needs to take into equation, no scheme fits take into equation, and the run on the position groups is not taken into the equation. So I like Quan Martin. He was one of the guys. I was the first of the ESPN analysts this year to file their rankings. It's like, you can't all do it the day of the draft, right? You got to spread the stuff out. So I was like, hey, I'll turn mine in early. No big deal. And he was the one player I texted my editor was like, I'm going to regret not moving him up. I should have bumped him up higher. So the versatility that he brings to the table is amazing. He's just super. I mean, he's all over the field. He's everywhere. He can play nickel. He can play single high. He's got great speed. And I actually thought that safety was the biggest need on defense. When we did our team needs, I got Washington, and I was like, gosh, this safety spot is not good. And so whether you see him as a nickel back or as a true free safety or even, kind of a hybrid safety that can play either up or down, it was such a huge need for this team. And so I know you mentioned left tackle, and it was one of my spots where it was like, gosh, this team has to get up. You got to get a tackle, They were all gone. Like the tackles went so early. Even Anton Harrison went in the 1st round. And I felt like when that happened, when Harrison went pick 28, after that happened, I was like, oh man, we're going to see a run on linemen if he's going this early. And we did, Matt Bergeron goes at 38, Steve Avila goes. So it's like, you just saw, even the Jets at 43 needed a tackle badly and didn't grab one. So I do think it was a situation where I'm a Cody Mock fan as well. I think he's probably a guard in the NFL. So it's one of those things of like, do you want to draft a guard here, or do you want to get someone who's going to start immediately at safety and can potentially be a very big impact player? And then you could look at interior offensive line a little bit later in the draft.
By the way, was the editor that you texted Ben Arledge?
It was. Absolutely was.
So story time on my end. Ben Arledge and I were roommates when we both were interns at ESPN back in 2011. I had not seen Ben since we left Connecticut back in the summer of 2011 until we were at High Velocity in Indy this year, and Nora Princiati, our good mutual friend from The Ringer, brought us together and was like, do you know Ben? Do you know Craig? And we're like, holy crap, what are you doing here? So that's my Ben Arledge story.
That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Great guy, one of the best.
Yeah, phenomenal. And way too stupid of a story to make up. Matt Miller's with us from ESPN for a few more minutes here on the Hoffman Show. So one of the guys, so I do a podcast with Logan Paulson, who played 10 years in the league and is a gigantic film nerd and loves O-line play. His biggest question mark in this class for the Commanders was Braden Daniels. He thinks he might like he sees some of the traits that he likes in the tackle, but he's not completely sold that he's going to be a tackle in the NFL. And that was obviously the Commanders' attempt to address tackle, which we've both mentioned already in this conversation. What do you make of Daniels as a prospect and how he projects if he's going to play outside?
Yeah, he's super quick. The great thing is he's played 18 games at left guard, 14 at left tackle, 11 at right tackle. So you could try him at left tackle, and if it doesn't work, all right, no problem. We're going to kick him inside because he has experience there. So I think it's a safe pick in that regard. He's definitely quick. The short arms, normally I'm a big like, ooh, short arms. He's the same size as Charles Leno. So it's like this can work, that size. And for offensive linemen with me, if you've got short arms, you better have great feet. And I do think he has good enough footwork to make up for that on the outside. So I'm intrigued by it. When I graded Daniels again for that, like, you know, hypothetical team, I thought, man, he'd be a really good guard because of his movement ability, because he's a little bit lighter. Like, let's just let him work in space, you know, like a 49ers type run blocking scheme. He's going to be great there. But at left tackle, like, it's worth seeing what he can do. And again, because he's played 3 different spots, it's not a projection. You know, a lot of times teams draft a guy and people are like, well, if it doesn't work, we'll just move him. And you're saying, let's move him to a position he's never played before. But with Daniels, he's done all that. He's proven he can play on either side of the line. He can play inside or outside. So it's like in the 4th round, worst case scenario, you've got a 3rd guard, which is a pretty dang good spot for the 4th round.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, they also go Ricky Stromberg out of Arkansas on the offensive line as well. I think he's got a chance to be their starting center and a really good one. Do you think he will be ready to be a starting center in the NFL as a rookie?
Yeah, absolutely. He was one of my favorite players in the draft. Like, if we make our list of, like, guys that, like, you love the way they play, he was mine. Like, I am such a huge fan of his. He's tough, physical. He can move really, really well. Now, like you mentioned, you know, last year he only played in 2 games, so that's going to be the thing of like, last year he played in every game. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. So replacing someone in Chase Roulier, who only played in 2 games last year, seems like it's going to be an easier transition, you know. So I do think I would pencil Stromberg in starting day one. I think that's his upside is as a starter, but the strength, the toughness, and that mobility at the second level, like, it's all there for him to step right in.
Yeah. It's also such an interesting thing for me when you get a new coordinator in, because it's like everyone's starting over. Now, granted, guys who have been in NFL systems and have NFL experience and understand the NFL rhythm and schedule and all that kind of stuff, it's always going to be easier. But it's not like, Tyler Larson, who was there last year, was their backup, is going to have some massive advantage over Stromberg because he's never been in the system before either. So obviously learning capacity is going to be a big deal.
And I would say, like, Eric Bieniemy had a rookie center and Creed Humphrey in Kansas City, and a lot of people are like, you can't do that. You can't have like a left-handed rookie center. You know, that's never going to work. And he was amazing. Like, he probably should have been an All-Pro as a rookie. So EB has some experience with getting a rookie center up to speed and getting them out there.
I've never thought about that before. Is left-handed centers, is that like Belichick's thing with left-handed punters? Does that matter?
Yeah, it does. Apparently it doesn't, because Creed's really good and Mahomes doesn't complain about it. I think it probably mattered more like back in the day of like everybody being under center all the time. But Creed Humphrey's the only left-handed center in the NFL that I know of, and it does, like, there's a different spin on the ball. So it's one of those things I guess everybody has to get used to.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. The shotgun thing versus how the ball would come out versus under center. I've literally never spent 1 second of my whole stupid life thinking about that. And now I cannot stop thinking about it. All right, last thing, Matt, for you on the way out, because you said you loved him. Why do you love KJ Henry so much, their 5th-round pick out of Clemson?
Man, every time I watch Clemson play, you know, you're trying to watch Miles Murphy and Brian Brzee because, like, oh, they're first-round picks. And there was a time early in the year where I was like, wait, what number is Miles Murphy? Because this other guy might be better. And so you're like flipping through your notes, like, wait. Like, I love KJ Henry. I mean, he flashes every time you watch him play. I mean, he's quick in space. He's like nonstop motor. He's running down backs. He's like running down screen plays. He's just an all effort defensive end. I love that. But he's athletic as well. And I think I said this when he was drafted on the telecast. Montez Sweat and Chase Young, like, there's decisions that have to be made with those contracts, especially Chase Young not getting the 5th-year option. KJ Henry's going to have an opportunity to prove this year that he can be that guy. And I know Chase Young came in with like expectations through the roof, but injury has limited that. If they're not going to bring him back, KJ Henry's got a shot to prove that he can be that guy.
Yeah, and frankly, even if he doesn't hit starter caliber immediately, like James Smith-Williams and Casey Toohill are also going to be free agents after the season, and F.A. Obata re-signed on a one-year deal. He is the only, I guess Andre, Jones, the guy they took in the last round as well.
Yeah.
Like those are the only two edge guys under contract in 2024 currently. So I hope you're right, and so do they, I guess is the short version of that.
And then he's talented. I can't wait for you to get to watch him in rookie camp or training camp. He's a lot of fun.
No doubt about it. Matt, great work this weekend. I've been a fan of your work for a long time. Glad to finally have you on the show, and hopefully we get a chance to do it again here in the relatively near future.
Sounds great, man. Appreciate it.
This is The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.